How do you start a business? No, I mean like really from the ground up. How do you start one? My name is Stephen Pope and I'm the founder of My Amazon Guy. And in today's podcast, we'll show you how it's done, how to start a business from scratch. So I'm now joined by my father, Dan Pope.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on, Dad. So the reason my father, Dan, is joining us is because last week, in less than 72 hours, we created a business from scratch. And that was a lot of work, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Now, there was some prep that we did before I came, right? We did a little bit before I arrived, but the majority...
only exceptions was like state filings. That's like it.
Yeah.
So in our podcast today, the structure we're going to talk about will be applicable to anybody who wants to start a business from scratch. So whether it's an Amazon business or in the case of my father, we started him a Weatherman consulting business.
Yes.
And that name is Weatherman On Demand. So let's talk a little bit about your background and why you're here today, what brought you here, and what your plans are. And then we'll talk about the business and what we did and how we did it. And you guys listening or watching can replicate.
Well, it starts out that I've been in the television business. I've been a television meteorologist in Salt Lake City. I've been on the Weather Channel. I've worked in Oregon as well as in Wisconsin. And I've done this for 38 years.
So you are a weather man.
Yes.
And and I always remember as a kid, you'd always talk about what it meant to be for Christmas. There had to be white snow on the ground.
Yes. And when I was 4 or 5 years old, it rained on Christmas. And I was so upset that I cried because it was important.
So for those watching, my father wanted to be a weatherman from the age of 5.
Yes.
And so in a couple weeks ago, his weather career came to an end. And he had to figure out what he wants to do next. So he's no longer on television. And so my dad and I were talking, like, what should I do? And so talk about some of the things that you thought about.
Well, I've been thinking, I've done acting and I've been in a movie. I've also done a lot of drone flying. And so I've thought about doing real estate drone and pictures for homes. I have several friends that are in that business. I've also dabbled in oil and buying up some stock in that area, and consulting in that area. But I've also done something for more than 30 years, which is weather consulting, mostly working with attorneys and court cases, looking at forensic meteorology and finding out, what happened on a certain day, what the weather was like, and then bringing that into either a court setting or into a deposition, or most of the time, about 90% of the time, it's just writing a letter explaining exactly what happened on that particular day.
So boring stuff, right? So as my father, Dan, was talking to me about like, hey, what should I go do? Where should I go spend my time? I encouraged him to come visit. So my father, Dan, lives in Utah. Mm-hmm. I'm in Georgia. And you didn't take an airplane.
Nope.
You drove.
Well, some of the things that are very frustrating about television, often I would say to your mom, Diane, that I just feel like getting in the car and driving and not coming back, because television is very frustrating. It's a business where people take advantage of people, and they pay most of their employees very low wages, and it's also a shrinking business. And so I was frustrated with it. So in a way, I did take that drive. I drove over 2,000 miles. I had a chance to think and clear my brain, get some ideas, things we'd talked about, and I arrived on about a week ago. It's a little 1 day and 1 week ago.
And since the day my father arrived, we've been working on building his business. Now I'm running a full-time service agency simultaneously, so it'd be like sprints when I get involved, and I'd be like, okay, Dad, go work on these things, right? So, and by the way, guys, I'm not claiming to know or be a business master. I just felt like I could help my dad.
Right.
And based on how quick we did it, I realized we'd done something special. And I think that a lot of you guys could benefit from it. So that's why we're doing this. And I want to first talk about like what it takes to think through how to start a business. So Dad, you first talked about like all of these different things
Yes.
that came to mind, and you had to pick. You had to pick one. So talk me through like how you figured out what you wanted to do.
Well, this was an opportunity for me to come here, not only to be with you and create a business, which you'd never done before, but you said you could do it. And I had faith in you because of your success in Amazon. So I look at all the other things that I enjoy doing, and what's the one that's most likely to make me some money? Because, well, in a lot of ways, money really isn't real. It's just a matter of building up equity in something that you own. And this is something, if I'm an actor, I get paid. If I'm a weatherman, I get paid. And it goes into the bank. But if I were to build something of my own, then it would become mine. And I could grow it, and it would become something that's valuable, an asset that brings money in, and something that I own. Nobody tells me that I'm fired.
And we've all been fired, right? Anybody listening or watching to this has been fired at some point. Whether it was a job loss or not, somebody's fired you, right? It could have been a business partner, it could have been a family member, it could have been an employee who quit and fired you as a boss, right? Everybody has been fired. So we all relate to that. So I felt like you had a lifelong passion and affinity to weather. And I really wanted you to not give that up.
Well, and I don't want to give it up. I love forecasting the weather, and I love looking at why things happen. One of the things that I noticed when I was a young boy was the lightning would happen, but the thunder didn't. And I wanted to know, well, why? That just is. And so then I wanted to learn. Well, I know light travels at 186,000 miles per hour, whereas thunder travels at 700 miles an hour. It's a whole lot slower. Now I understand it. But as a kid, I didn't. But I wanted to know.
So as a young boy, you were curious, and you're a giant nerd, and I love it. And I love it. So anybody who wants to go into meteorology, let's give them one piece of advice. What would you say?
Meteorology is something that most of the jobs are in the government, working for the National Weather Service. I would say about 80%. So most folks are going to end up working a swing shift. So my advice is, before you, the thing that you have to think about is, with weather happening 24/7, you end up with having to work shifts. So overnight shifts and mid shifts and early shifts. So understand that most of you that are going to get into this would probably have to be in that kind of a job situation. But the thing is, it's like in our blood. Okay, so if you really love weather, you can't do anything else. There are a few people who get into television. There are some who do the private industry. There are others who have certain things that are related to meteorology. Maybe it goes into planetary meteorology. I have a friend who went to the Air Force Academy. He was with me at the University of Utah, and he went on to be a planetary meteorologist. He looked at the weather on different planets around. That fascinates me.
I would love to spend time learning more about space and planets. That'd be a blast. Okay, so my dad loves weather, and he wasn't sure what he wanted to do, and we had a brainstorm session. And I said, you really shouldn't do this drone thing. You shouldn't spend time on social media, and oil is cool and all, but you're a weatherman. And so we then said, okay, cool. We're going to do something with weather. We don't know what. And then we had to narrow it down. So the next process was, what's in demand? But
we had a name originally, and the name
we switched the name.
Yeah, it was weather cloud.
Weatherman.cloud. We bought that domain, and I thought that was clever, right? Because obviously .cloud domains have nothing to do with weather. They're probably more tech related. But so we bought that, and then all of a sudden, I don't know who said
brainstorm session. It was your wife Emily.
And she came up with, and she said, well, what is it that he does? And I was like, well, we got like 20 ideas. What if he was on demand for a weathercast from any TV station in the country, and within 2 hours you could hire a weatherman to go on the air? And she's like, sounds like Weatherman on Demand. And I was like, yeah, that's actually pretty good.
And then I said, yep, that's it.
So we switched the name. So first thing you got to figure out when you're building a business, what's the name of the company? Now here's the good news. If you screw that part up, that doesn't mean you can't DBA it or create a brand name that's anything you want. And case in example, I own a company called Mail Your Goods, which kind of sounds like an STD sometimes. And I made a brand name called Momster. And of course, that's the one I advertise. So the holding company, though, is one that doesn't resonate. Nobody can spell it and makes no sense. So I did screw up that part when I made that company. And you just create a brand name and DBA the rest, and you can fix it. So step one, create a company name. Whether it's the company name that you advertise or not is irrelevant. Now, in this case, we did align the two. We made all the branding and all of the paperwork, state registration, you name it, under Weatherman On Demand. So let's go through a short list of the logistics that are involved in this.
Well, I needed an EIN, so I had to file for that. I also had to go to the state of Utah.
Hold on, we gotta go way slower because half the people who've never started a business before have no idea what an EIN is. So I don't even know what the acronym stands for, but basically it's a federal ID number that allows the government to tax you nationally as a business. So that's step one. This is really easy to obtain, takes less than 2 minutes. Just literally Google, get an EIN. That's Elephant Igloo Nancy, EIN, and you'll be able to find that and get that done. That is probably the easiest one to do. You're smiling, though. Was it easy?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, it was easy.
All right. Okay, so then the next was the state registration.
Needed to go to the state and make sure there wasn't another company, Weatherman On Demand, in the state of Utah.
And this one's different per state. You might see some differences. So in the state of Georgia, for example, I just filed mine, paid the fee, and I was good. But in Utah, they actually check and make sure, it's kind of like a trademark filing, made sure nobody else had it. So that one took a little bit more effort.
A little bit more, but it wasn't that hard. I mean, I got it. I finished it up, and you gave me this list of things to do, and I just went plowing through them.
So let's talk about list building, right? So when you first start a company, the most important thing you do is come up with an objective. So in our case, our objective was to give my father employment inside of Weather somehow, some way. And we wanted to basically create a consulting business. So that's what he does, right? So anybody, if you go to Weatherman On Demand right now, you can buy a coaching call about any weather subject with him today and be on the phone with him. So that was our first service. We're going to talk about all the services and ideas we came up with and how to go to market and what to do. But before you get to the service level, before you can market it, you have to have infrastructure in place. And to get infrastructure in place, you need to get organized.
Yeah, you have to get organized and make lists.
And so for those that aren't good organizers, your sock drawer's messy, you need to get something like Asana. And Asana is my favorite go-to project management tool. And it's, get this, free for you. So check it out, asana.com. And you can go in there and build a team. You can have multiple people in there. All your tasks are managed. It's like your classic team building software, but it was built by people who were pissed off that other project management software were lacking some key elements, and they rebuilt it. So it's a relatively new tool. I'm a big endorser of it. All right, so that was the first thing we did. We created a list of actions. So we made a business plan, if you will.
That's a good way to say it. Business plans are very important, because without them, you may get to a fork in the road and take the wrong fork.
So this this list or organization, did it feel overwhelming at first?
Absolutely. In some cases, it still feels a little bit overwhelming. But what's been wonderful is, and you need to give yourself credit, because think about it. You started the company Mellum.
Forget the STD company. Let's talk agency, side hustle, wine glass brands.
But you started these companies before, so it really wasn't that you didn't know how to start a company with me or help me. You've done it.
Yeah.
So your experience.
But I've never done it for somebody else, and so I basically came up with a list of like, hey, here's what I think we need to go get done, and the list never ends, right? Like it's an ever building list. So we got organized. and you had this list, and how did I help you make it palatable?
Because you showed me how to use it in Asana, and in Asana, I was able to go in and see what tasks I needed to complete. And certain tasks needed to be done by certain days, and if they didn't get done, they got pushed forward. So that helped me organize, and I'm a disorganized, organized person.
I don't even know what that means.
Because I don't show that I'm disorganized on the outside, but really on the inside, I'm a bit disorganized.
Okay, all right. Okay,
it's like a computer. You can have a computer that looks beautiful, right? But on the inside, I have my mess. And you can't see my mess.
Makes sense. Okay, I get it now. All right, so my job was to bring order
to disorder,
to chaos, and so we have this chaos of ideas and thoughts, and you come over. You're not shy on ideas.
No,
not at all. So we had to decide or prioritize what ideas we're going to go execute. So what did we? So we got the EIN, which is the federal number. We got the state registration. And then there were two other key infrastructure things. We got a bank account and a credit card. And by the way, these are the four things you need to get an Amazon account.
So once you have that, you can have an Amazon account.
Yes.
And you can call you because myamazonguy.com does that stuff.
We do. So, and we're a full service agency from SEO, PPC, which is advertising, design, and catalog management all in the house. But so for Weatherman on Demand, we had the infrastructure in place. We got organized. We came up with some ideas, and we made a list. We used Asana, and the next step was to start building it.
Yes.
And so in our case, you need a vehicle to get the message to the masses, and our vehicle was a website.
Yep. And you have to have the website for to use Google or anything else. You have to have that website for a landing spot. Without a landing spot, there's nowhere for people to find out about you. So that's why you have to build a website.
And so you have 38 years of digital presence. However, it was a little difficult for you to go out and say, Stephen, here are my 5 best videos. And I asked you to do that.
Yes.
How did that go?
It took me a long time. I probably put more hours into looking for the best videos and looking for photographs that we could put on the website because it needed to be populated. It needs to look really good. This has to be eye appealing, right? Because otherwise people will come and say, oh, there's nothing here. I'm out of here. Or they'll stick around and look at some things. So it did. It took a lot of time.
And
for me anyway.
And so there was zero budget to start this business. We were basically using the agency resources. I hired a designer out of the Philippines who had never built a website before, but was a really good graphic artist. So got her on the cheap. And I had built many websites in my career. In fact, we do one Shopify build a week at the agency, but they're so in demand that we couldn't spare our designers to build the site. So I actually had to go bootstrap, get a virtual assistant out of the Philippines. I used onlinejobs.ph to find them. And I created a laundry list of what I wanted her to do. It did not go perfectly. I had to get my elbows deep in the swamp to go.
So you had to build
it.
This.
And I'm a marketer. I'm not a designer. And it was difficult to get it to look like I had it in my brain. But I've built so many websites. I knew exactly what I wanted it to look like, and I knew we wanted to go to market with a certain number of services. So here are the core pages that we built. We built a homepage. And on the homepage, you want to basically do two things, in my opinion. First, in 30 seconds, the landing page of the homepage needs to say, here's what I do and why it matters. It's your elevator pitch needs to come across. So
30 seconds.
So you got less than 30 seconds to do this. Maybe even the litmus test needs to be 10 seconds before they bounce and leave the website.
Yeah.
Okay. The second thing the homepage needs to do is qualify your service as an expert. So we came up with some quantification for this. How many hours have you spent on television? Mm-hmm. How many forecasts have you given? Your meteorology degree. The fact that you had put out an actual video tape that had been used in elementary schools.
Two of them.
And had been broadcast and fully developed, and you were the producer.
Yes. And the
talent and everything from soup to nuts, one-man band style. I mean, it was a team effort, but you get the idea. Mm-hmm. It wasn't bankrolled or anything. So we put up that video from the 1990s.
96, 97.
So super old video, right? But we did it on purpose to show that he's been doing this so long. Okay. We then found other.
I co-authored a book.
And we're still in the process of getting the book digitally put on the site. So that part's not done. But basically, we tried to find out any way we could to qualify Dan Pope as a weatherman expert, one of the best weatherman experts in the country. And the site does express that very well, in my opinion. All right, so that's the home page. The second most important page is the contact page. And this is how do you get a hold of him? Right? So because there's no other projects going on right now, we did something that most people won't be able to do or feel comfortable. We put his phone number at the top of the website. Now, we didn't get his cell phone on the top of the website, but we created a Google Voice number and made that accessible so that anybody could call him immediately. Okay, but the contact page is a way to collect information. So there's 3 pieces of a contact page that you need: a name, a phone number, an email, and I guess there's a 4th. Why do you need me? So build a contact page as your second priority so that somebody can get a hold of you. This is important, more particularly for a service or a consulting business than it is a product business. A product business, go build a Shopify site, and your second most important page will be the product page. But in this case, my father is the product. So product page, detail page with contact details in this case, and whatnot. Okay, so then the next page is the About Us page. This is where we were able to put like your CV, if you will, or a resume, and we copy and pasted basically your career onto the About Us page.
That's right.
And so we've already talked about your history going from all over the country, from Oregon to working at the Weather Channel in Atlanta to Milwaukee to Utah. So you've been to the 4 corners of the country almost. And so you got a lot of weather experience and whatnot. So we built that page out. And then the next job was to figure out the service. So what is the service that we're going to offer? So we did a B2C product and we did a B2B product. So because you have an audience that you've cultivated for decades, we built the first thing we launched was a B2C product in the form of a Cameo. So talk to me about this. What was that?
Well, the Cameo is me saying that if you'd like to have a special birthday wish, I'll do it for you, for your friend or family, and we'll do it for, not much money. And
$25, 30-second Cameo.
And we'll turn it around within a day. That was the hook.
And we have not got an order yet, but I was really hoping we would have, right? So like it's not succeeding yet.
We've done a soft launch. Okay,
we did a soft launch. We haven't really marketed anything, mind you, other than a LinkedIn and a Facebook post. That was it.
Yep.
But when I launched the agency at my Amazon guy, I had my first client in 48 hours from a LinkedIn post. And that client stayed with me for 2.5 years. We grew them from 0 to 400,000 in monthly revenue. So I was kind of hoping to replicate that. Haven't quite yet. So there's some things for us to figure out and message and market. But we decided the Cameo way was a good way to market to the audience that knew Dan Pope from television. Okay. So the second service was a retainer. So talk to me about that.
Well, I've done a lot of consulting with attorneys, and we've gone to court deposition, to court, whatever it is. And I like doing that, but there are a number of things that people need. And we made a list that was really long and kind of determined that these were the things that we wanted to put in, say, 7 hours for so much money, which is how consulting works.
So just strike those out. Like list them really quick. Like agriculture,
ski resorts, big companies like Big D Construction or whatever. They need to know if there's going to be bad weather coming in. What if their workers are out and there are high winds heading their way?
Weddings, outside party events, concerts. And so we came up with this list of things that somebody could use a weatherman for. And because we don't have the assets, time, or ability to go out and make 20 landing pages for each one of these ideas, we did the next best thing. We put everything on one page and said, hire Dan Pope for 7 hours for $1,000, and you can get weather consulting on any one of these things, whatever you need.
Pick it.
We're
I'll
confident.
do it. Yeah, I can do them all.
Yep. So whether it's pulling up a map and a weather forecast and telling the weather, or whether it's telling, hey, this is the average over the course of the last 17 years in this particular location. Here's what I would expect should you drill oil there, right? So here is the biggest conundrum that we have right now that we haven't solved, and that is, how do we micro-famous style find our niche? Right. We don't know what the niche is yet. Yep. So before we figure out the niche and before we start marketing in gusto, so to speak, I had you do a little bit of homework, and that was to read a few books.
Yes, I've been reading books, lots of books, more books than I've ever read in my life.
And it's an unusual experience for you.
Yes, I read a lot of current. I love to look at news, and I look at the weather, of course, every day. Can't help that. But reading a book for me hasn't been my forte.
And so I had to encourage you a lot on this one.
Well, what about the book I'm reading right now? You sent it to me how many months ago?
Yes.
I'm finally reading it.
So let's talk about the book title. So
Okay.
there in my mind, I had created this education path that I wanted my dad to go down to be in the mentality of being an entrepreneur. And my dad is not an entrepreneur. He's an ideas guy and he's a meteorologist, right? So like, you got to know what your strengths are. And so for some of you watching this, you might think I'm being a little mean to my dad. I'm not. We're talking about being real, right? This is an authentic conversation about where we know his strengths and his weaknesses are. So we found a weakness. We knew we needed to address it. Every business owner needs to do this. All right. So I thought that if you read a few books, it would help spark some ideas and get you ready to jump in full force to be an entrepreneur.
Enlightenment.
Enlightenment, if you will. Yes. Which I don't claim to have. But all right. So the first book that I asked you to read was a few months ago. Name of that book and tell me about it.
It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or Poor Dad, Rich Dad, I think.
And in 30 seconds or less, what's the book about?
The book is about one father who says to his son, you just need to get an education. Another father that says, which is his friend's father, who says that getting an education isn't as important as understanding finances, how to do accounting, how to accumulate wealth and make it work for you.
And which dad was rich and which was poor?
His dad is the poor dad, and the friend, his father, is the rich dad. So both of them, both the author and his friend, became very wealthy, especially his friend, because his friend took over his father's businesses. And they were in Hawaii, and that was as Hawaii was becoming a state, and then they were growing like crazy, and he had all these businesses that were growing, and his son became even better than his father.
So I felt like that was a good book because it opens the entrepreneurial floodgates, right? You look at how to solve a problem from a very different perspective after you read that book. So if you've never started a business and you've always worked for the man and you want to work for yourself, that's the first book I recommend you read. Now, the second book was called Microfamous. Tell me about that book.
Microfamous is very interesting read. It helped me think about my audience, because in television, my audience is out there, whoever has a television, and they can turn the TV on or not, or they might be reading my social media, which I'm very big on social media. I do an awful lot of Facebook and not so much Twitter, Instagram, and so on and so forth. So that audience is really important. But in Microfamous, what I've learned is that that audience might be very big, but the people who might buy my consulting are a very small fraction of the big audience. And so I need to figure out ways to reach that audience that's micro or small, and then I'll be famous.
To that audience.
Yeah, to that audience. And it'll won't be the big audience. And I don't need a big audience. I just need to find those who are in that fringe area that need my services.
And the reason that's topical to the podcast is we don't know which of the 20 weather events you're going to niche in. We think oil is one of the most promising on the list.
Call it energy. Forecasting for energy for two things. For them while they're out working on the site, but also for the temperatures, what they're going to be like. So if it gets really hot, we're going to use an awful lot of natural gas, because that's where we're going for, rather than burning coal, they burn natural gas. That creates electricity. In the hot summer, they need more of it.
So the question is, how do we build a famous audience, so to speak, like the book claims we need to do, and I believe the book. And we have to make a decision here in the next couple weeks. My father is going to start a podcast, and the question is, what should be on it? He's going to start putting out YouTube content, and the question is, what should be in it? Because if we go too broad and we say, hey, follow Dan Pope for weather, that could mean anything at all.
And most people want weather for free, because why pay for weather? Because you can just go to your phone and get a forecast.
There was a day you'd visited a couple of years ago, and we were sitting down to dinner, and we were talking about what the weather was going to be. And my wife, Emily,
Yes.
this was.
I had a light bulb go on in my head.
So tell me what you remembered.
Well, she turned over to, is it Alexa?
Alexa.
And she said, Alexa, what's the weather going to be like today? And Alexa just blurted out today what the forecast is. And I went, oh my television job is going to be gone in the next 10 years. Maybe sooner.
Happened a lot quicker than 10.
Well, but I mean most television jobs. The relevance of television when you have all of the generations, the Z generation, whatever generation, all of those generations that have become easily turned to things like Alexa and Google or whatever. All they have to do is ask a question and it comes to them. Or they go to their phone and they get the forecast.
So we know that the B2C product is not going to work, right? So we know we have to go B2B and business to business. So who has money? Who would want the service? So we're gonna probably niche the business in oil or in some B2B aspect of some kind. So now that we understand how to organize the business, how to structurally get the logistics in place, we needed the website in place so that we could start the next phase, which is marketing. And that's what Microfamous is about. So we haven't executed this one. That one's going to be next on the list. There are two more books that I intend to have part of our learning exercises, and that would be a book called Unique Ability. So my dad's unique ability is that he is an extrovert, highly ambitious, lots of ideas, not a rule follower, and impatient. So he's a daredevil. And anybody who's paying attention to Culture Index knows what I'm talking about. So because of that, we are trying to build around his unique ability and make him a company that he will be happy to run. And so you take the science behind your personality and you try and marry it to your unique ability so your passion aligns with your unique ability. And so we're still trying to word what the unique ability is, and that's why we need to read the book to understand it, right? So we're getting there. So my unique ability is that I can look at any data set and look at facts only. People don't matter, no emotion. I'm an emotionless robot, and I can look at any factor detail and come up with a conclusion on what lever to pull to make something happen. And my passion is to see it get done. So I'm really good pairing me with somebody who is an extrovert. So I'm an introvert, my father's an extrovert, and people, when they buy your service, they're going to buy you.
Yeah.
And people who buy my service, they don't buy me. They buy my SOP of my brain,
yes.
Right? And so it's very two different business models, two different people. You got to know who you are as an individual. And you need to build the business around that. So if you're a visionary, hire an integrator who can keep you organized and get stuff done. If you're an integrator, you're probably shy in ideas, you're good in organization, but you don't know where to start because you don't have an idea or a grand scheme. All right, so those are the things that you have to think about. The fourth and final book I want you to read is called Power versus Force, and that is the Enlightenment joke of the evening.
Okay.
Because it is about enlightenment. It has nothing to do with business, but sometimes in life, when you go through trouble or problems, you need a pick-me-up to think about how things are connected and where true power comes from instead of the forceful nature that beats us down. And so if you're in a rough place today, I highly recommend you read Power versus Force. And so that's the literature that we're working on, work in progress, marketing work in progress. So
this is an amazing thing, though. You have to realize this. I have not been able to get myself to sit down and read books. and yet
because society's crazy right now.
Right. So, but let's just say, that's why I use the word enlightenment, even though I haven't read that book yet.
Because
I'm opening my mind up to things that I haven't thought about, and reading books. I can read fast. That's not the problem. But I think when I'm reading, so I have to stop, either write it down or I have to read it again when I go off track. So it's been amazing that you've gotten me to do this.
And it's a good feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, not every page you read is a page turner, right?
No.
But you have a positive experience.
Oh, absolutely. It's been positive. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is opening up my eyes to some things I had never thought about. And Micro Famous allows me to I don't have to be famous in every area. I can just find a niche, and that'll be okay.
And I think about a guy, I don't even know what book I read this in. It's probably been years since I read this one. Might even have been Purple Cow. Basically, there's a guy in the middle of nowhere, and he repairs airplanes. And the only way to get a hold of this guy is to call his hangar and get lucky that he's in the hangar at the time. Like, no email, no nothing. Call the hangar. Good luck if you get a hold of him. But the dude is so niche. He's the only guy in the whole country that can repair a certain type of airplane. So his business is booming. He's a multimillionaire.
Wow.
Yeah. So we want that. We want to be this niche guy that nobody can touch, that he's 10,000 miles deep, but an inch wide. and if we can pull that off, we got a business. So that's what you need to do. If you're going to create a business, you need to find where you can be 10,000 miles deep, but an inch wide. And sometimes when you create a business, it's not just about coming up with the business idea. It's often about the execution. It's often about the mental fortitude and the physical fortitude, right? So, you served a church mission for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like banging on doors and being told no all day long?
That was difficult. In fact, difficult enough that I didn't like doing it. So being the person I am, which I was then, is I wouldn't do things I didn't like to do. I'd force myself to do it, but I didn't enjoy doing it.
But so in sales and in business, you have to understand that you're going to have 100 no's to find that one yes. And so there is really truly some mental fortitude that you have to grasp and understand, that when you're going through this process, you're going to play 100 poker hands. You don't know which one's got pocket aces, and you got to play all 100 out. And you got to look at that flop, and you got to bet accordingly. And I know I just went from religion to betting. So the only time, when's the only time a Mormon bets?
Oh yeah,
I told this joke at dinner today. It's
when there's a profit.
When there's a profit involved, right? So that's a play on words, because there's a profit in our religion, and profit, the word for making money. So made that joke when I was a kid, and that's probably the only joke I'll ever make. It's the only one that gets a laugh. So, and probably the only people laughing at it are the Mormons. So,
Nope.
All right. So we talked about how to be ready on multiple fronts. There were a laundry list of smaller activities. I just want to kind of go through them really, really quick. So we signed you up for QuickBooks,
Yes.
to get the accounting integrated. We connected the bank account, the credit card, all that good stuff. PayPal, Calendly, so somebody could schedule an appointment and pay him. Calendly is helping with organization for the calendar. It's no more of this like, hey, when are you available? I don't know, maybe next week. Cool, neither of us talked about a specific date or time, so this conversation has gone nowhere. Calendly, give me a link. Cool, schedule when you're ready. Done. Onus is on you, my friend. And so you're the one that's going to schedule, and you got a full access to my calendar and figure it out. What other logistics and other things did we get in place? Just real briefly go through them.
Well, we had to get everything. We had Google, so we used Google Landing.
G Suite.
G Suite. G Suite allows us to send messages to each other. So when you're really busy, you can send me a message. You need to do this, this, and this.
And the larger your organization gets, the more I think you should use Slack, by the way. Google Hangouts is good for a single person, two-person organization. G Suite only costs like $6 a month, and you can have all your MX records there and have a domain name. So we did forget about talking. We mentioned we bought domains. We didn't say how to do it. Go to Namecheap. Namecheap is where you should get your domains. GoDaddy's also cool, but Namecheap's cheaper. All right, cool. So keep going. Anything else that comes to mind?
Oh, well, inside of there, all the documents, every folder that we share. And it keeps me organized so that I know exactly what my passwords are. It keeps me...
So LastPass for passwords is great. However, in our instance, we chose to put everything into a single Google Sheet so that everybody who's working on the project could quickly access everything. So write down all your credentials. You got your EIN. Guess where does it go? It goes on the...
It goes on the sheet that tells us what all the information, what my number is. The EIN number is inside this list that you have up over on the computer that nobody can see, but we can see it.
Yeah, and where does that Google Voice number go?
Goes into the sheet.
Goes into the sheet. That is the question. That
PayPal password.
Goes into the sheet. Even though, so we got some sensitive financial stuff in the sheet too, right? Like hopefully we never get hacked, but that's not the point. The point is you have to get organized with all of your information, because if you don't do that from day one,
you're gonna spin your wheels looking for something and spend an hour, waste an hour trying to find it.
Other things you can create: DocuSign if you ever need to get something signed. Invoicing. I like to use Harvest. You can also use QuickBooks. Payroll, we haven't done that. We don't need to do that for your business, but I like to use Gusto. These are all the infrastructure things that need to get in place. We also made Buzzsprout for podcasting. Mm-hmm. All of your social media and all those credentials: YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. I made you make a TikTok.
Yeah, I'm not. But do you realize that it was you who made me do my first fake Facebook page way back when? Do you remember?
I do not.
You made me do that.
I saw it coming back in the day.
And that was in, I believe, 2012, I think.
I have no idea. It doesn't ring a bell.
But you set it up for me. You had me do it because you said I needed to be there. And guess what? I have 5,000, and I can have no more than 5,000 on that one so I had to make a professional page in Facebook, and it's grown to over 16,000 followers.
I now remember I made you a Facebook profile because I needed to play a stupid video game on Facebook, and I needed a second profile.
But I eventually used it and grew it. I mean, it's amazing what you've done to help me. It goes way back. It's not just today, but it goes way back.
All right, so we want to wrap here pretty quick. So we also did another core thing, which is we reviewed the competition. So before I even talked you into the business, I did something a little personality, shall we say. What did I do?
I don't remember.
I went and signed up for all of your competitors, and I sent a note to them, and I said, hey, my name's Dan Pope, and I'm thinking about getting into weather consulting. Can you talk to me for 5 minutes?
Yes.
And you weren't ready to make the leap, and I did it for you, and I was... don't do that to your dad, but I
got a really good phone conversation with one of the competitors, and I tried to do a visit. In fact, I've been on the phone, and or not on the phone, but back and forth with emails with a company, AWIS, which is in Auburn, Georgia, and I may still run down there and visit him. But he's going to retire shortly, but he's run this business and builds their own computer models. I mean, it's pretty cool. So I did get some response on that.
So talk to your competition. Ask them how they run. Would they do it again? They'll tell you. I'm telling you guys, they'll tell you. So call up your competition. Ask for all their trade secrets. Quite frankly, if you run an Amazon agency today and you want to know my trade secrets, you get me on the phone, I will tell you them all. That's because I know if I do that, you're going to call me up 3 months later and you're going to need my service.
And you're going to get hired.
And I'm going to get hired. And it's all about execution, expertise, value-adding, content gen. Audience building is my way of getting attention. And it's a currency. It really is. So I'm morphing all of these books together, Microfamous, Gary Vee, creating my own flavor, doing all those things. All right, so I'm looking down the list that we initially created. We got everything organized. So one thing you still need to do is get video testimonials. Mm-hmm. All right, so we're going to do that. If you run a service, you need video testimonials. We got Google Analytics connected, Google Webmaster connected, build out the site. We're going to work on maybe creating a draft proposal agreement, although I think we just ran with like buy 7 coaching hours and, you're doing that. Jot form, we had signed up for that so we could collect payment as well as build a retainer. We're going to then start doing marketing. We're going to do content gen. So that's like the next phase that we're entering into. And then following that, when things take off, we'll hire an assistant, keep you organized, and you'll be on the phone all day.
Making money.
So that's the plan. Thank you guys for watching today. Dad, any last parting words of wisdom?
I would say have a good time with your kids because they will always support you when you need help. And love your kids. I love my kids with all my heart. And I would say also to be forgiving. So, do the best you can. Always do the best you can. You don't have to be number one, but if you do the best you can, that's the most important thing.
Well, Dad, I appreciate you joining my Amazon Guy podcast today. I love you lots. And
I love you too.
I hope those that are following this were able to, get something out of this. Go take action today. If the only thing you do is write down 3 business names, you're doing yourself a favor. Go write down 3 business names. Get started today. If you have a hard time getting organized, write everything down and write a plan and then put a timetable to it and then start executing it. So I will likely, not today, not on this podcast, but I will likely create a checklist on how to launch a company. After I did this and I talked to my wife, Emily, she said, you guys did something special. You should charge $50,000 for that. And I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe we will. So that might be my next business down the line. We'll find out. In any case, that is the My Amazon Guy podcast. If you're joining us from my father's network, My Amazon Guy is a full-service Amazon agency. Everything from advertising to design, management, and SEO and logistics all in one house. MyAmazonGuy.com. That's the My Amazon Guy podcast. We're so glad you were listening. Please subscribe. Maybe give us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you found us. And we really appreciate it. My name is Stephen Pope, and I am the founder of My Amazon Guy. And today we talked about how to launch a business.